So Dave, 6 months on from the general meeting, what would you say has been achieved in that period?
I think what has been achieved is that if one goes back to not only the 6 months, but just prior to that, there was the issue of, I guess, what the mandate was for, and if we dwell kind of maybe one more time on the regime change, and I think that there was a number of kind of campaign promises, if I can use that term, were made to the fans. The one was that you will get a board that will put the interests of the club first. I think the fans probably recognise, I think that is in place right now. We had to put in a new executive team, managing director, financial director, commercial director. That is all in place now, and we're all obviously delighted with the team we've got in place there as well. And we had the key decision of trying to get the right management appointment. There's a number of options. We eventually obviously decided on Mark Warburton and Davy Weir. They had to come in and essentially rebuild the squad. I think we all know how dilapidated the squad was, I think partly in terms of confidence and partly the walkout in terms of numbers. And I think the fans will definitely agree, and say the atmosphere indicates that there's been a huge change in the footballing fortunes of the club, and hopefully the promise I made that we would definitely win the league this year is something that I think we can now see is, I think, fairly is likely to be a reality.
What challenges would you say still remain for yourself and the board?
I think there's still a lot of challenges, I think, in terms of the programme to get the club back to where we want the club to be. I think this season was an important season because it was important that we won the championship. We don't want to get involved in playoffs, and we wanted to win the championship well. We wanted to do that in a way that gave the fans a product on the field that they could look forward to next season. And already, while it is very, very early stages in this season, and one doesn't want to get too far ahead of oneself, so I think we are already, given now we've got the certainty of the board structure, the certainty of the executive structure, the certainty of the footballing structure, we're already looking forward to what we think we need to do to lift ourselves again for next season, to campaign and compete in the Premier League, and then thereafter, the following season, be back in Europe. So there's still quite a bit to be done over the next 2.5 years to realise, what we are stating as being a clear ambition.
You've spoken before about the noise level that has surrounded the club. That seems to have gone down significantly. That must be very pleasing for yourself and the board. It's
been fantastic for the board. There's a lot that we've had to do behind the scenes, and I think unfortunately it's well documented that too much of the board issues were being debated in the media and been the main, in fact, topic of conversation around the club. And I think now we've seen the football, in fact, quite rightly and very thankfully taking over the main media coverage, and we can quietly get on with what we've got to do behind the scenes to rebuild the club on the other side. And a huge amount of progress has been made over the last 6 months.
Just how impressed have you been with the new team, the new manager, and 9 wins to begin the season? It's been a fabulous start.
It's been phenomenal. I think not just the 9 wins, I think the way they're winning. I think that they're playing to the end. I think the enthusiasm for goals, I think the style of football as well. I think it is probably fair to say that if you look at the success that Mark and Davy have had in bringing players in, they actually haven't missed a beat. And there are very few clubs, look at my other English club, Liverpool, there are very few clubs that are bringing in players and having the level of success rate I think that Mark and Davy have had in terms of their performance for the club. So it really is going, I think, as well as one could ever have dreamed, really.
Has it perhaps even been better than anticipated? I think a lot of people would have thought there'd be a settling in process for the new players and new manager, but there hasn't seemed to have been that at all. Yeah,
we discussed this in fact at the board meeting yesterday, and we really feel that we're kind of way ahead of any of our best expectations, both off the field and on the field. We'd already had a contingency discussion that, if the league was still reasonably tight, round about December, what would we do in terms of topping up in the transfer window? Whereas now I think we're feeling more comfortable that the business that's been done to date is adequate to see us through this season. So our plans, even for the January transfer window, already focusing on improving the squad, looking to next season and not really looking over our backs to the extent that we probably thought we'd have to be doing at this stage. So it really is, I'd say, much better than we had even dreamed of, I think, at this early stage of the season.
The manager has been very complimentary of the support he's had from the board and from yourself. I mean, how would you describe your relationship with Mark?
I think it's fantastic. I think that from our point of view, obviously he came in with the backing of the board because he was the board's choice, so he had that confidence, and I think we've made it very clear to him that he'd also be backed financially because the objectives that we have for the club is clearly beyond the division we're in at the moment. So we've kind of had a common mindset, and obviously from the board's point of view, the confidence the board will now have in the management team, given what they've demonstrated in the field, I think just reinforces the strength of that relationship.
During the summer, so many players arrived. Did you perhaps spend more than anticipated or less even?
We didn't spend more than anticipated in the sense that we've really looked at it not as a period expenditure. We're kind of looking at what's required to get the club, say, back into Europe. I think what has been good is we spent the money we thought we'd have to spend, but to repeat what I said earlier, I think we've been not necessarily fortunate because it goes to the skills of the managers in identifying the right players, but it's very unusual, I think, to bring in the number of players that he's brought in and for them all virtually to be kicking in right away and without the settling in period. So in that sense, I think we're certainly far better off than I would have thought would have been at this early stage.
You discussed, sort of touched on your plans for January there. Should the manager wish to spend money, is there money available for him to do so?
Yes, I think what we've said to him is that if there are opportunities in the January transfer window, even if at that time we think we might not need to acquire additional players to win the league this season, we should already be looking forward to next season. So we've really given him a mandate to say, obviously you've got to still win the league this season, it's not done yet, and we shouldn't overly anticipate that, but at the same time have a mind to what we think needs to be in place for the beginning of next season. We've now got virtually a whole season to prepare for that, and let's use that time wisely and try and bed in some players perhaps in advance of the new season. Without
wishing to get too far ahead of ourselves, you know, next summer hopefully Rangers will be looking forward to the Premiership. Again, you know, if the manager requires finance, will it be there? And if it's there, where will it be coming from? Yeah,
our current plans are still that the manager will require finance to upgrade the squad. So we're looking at bringing in a number of players before getting into the Premier League, because we get into the Premier League to challenge for the Premier League. We're not going in there to come second. You know, we recognise there is a significant gap right now between ourselves and Celtic, but the mindset is still to put a team in the Premier League next year that can compete with Celtic, and have a mind already on the following season where we expect to be playing in Europe. And I think that the manager understands that the funds will be available from the existing resources. The other investors such as myself have given commitments that we will continue to fund it through that period. So in that sense, nothing has changed relative to the commitments we gave the fans previously, other than to repeat what I said earlier. I think we're probably further down the track in terms of having a relatively good success in the signings that we've made so far.
We've seen close on 34,000 season tickets sold so far. That must be very, very heartening for the board to see that the fans are backing the club in such a manner.
Yeah, it's been great. I mean, it's over 60% up in the previous year. And I think we've also seen that while the season ticket season in itself kind of ends very often at the beginning of the season, I think the way that the team is playing is now encouraging some of the fans who may have thought, look, let's wait and see what the product is in the field. So we're now seeing, with the introduction of the 75% season ticket, given there's a couple of games under our belt, that there's a further uptick in that. And you know, I think a lot of the fans are now already looking perhaps to next season and saying, look, maybe this is a chance to get the season ticket in advance, you know, in that way secure it for next season as well, where we're going to be back playing the Old Firm games again.
How have you found the support from the fans in general? They seem to be rallying around the club in almost every aspect at the moment.
It's been phenomenal. In fact, it goes back to, I think what I'd referred to in a number of interviews, that we'd try and give the fans more of a recognisable Rangers. And I think that's what the fans are starting to see. And you know, there's been comments made from Walter Smith recently, the board, you know, just going into the blue room and around the director's box. There's just the type of atmosphere and feel-good factor within the club, and I think we're getting that back from the fans as well. So I think the fans are starting to enjoy, you know, what I'd again call a more recognisable Rangers football club in terms of what they've expected in the past.
Over the last few days, there's been some press coverage suggesting that a deal was close with Alistair McCoist. Is there any update to give on that?
Yes, we have reached agreement with Ali McCoist, and he's agreed to an early termination of his contract. So we're very grateful for him for his cooperation in that regard.
What was the meeting like? Was it amicable between yourself and Ali?
It was very friendly. I in fact started discussions with Ali when I was here at the end of July, and we opened up discussions around, you know, the possibility of Ali looking at what he might do with the contract, and he was very, very supportive of that. There was a number of things that he had to look at. There's labour law issues. You know, if you do end in a contract like that, there's certain legal requirements in terms of the local laws, which he had to look at very, very carefully. And we agreed we would follow up again on this visit. And we met yesterday and we reached agreement very, very quickly. And I think Ali's been very generous to the club in terms of, you know, the agreement that we've reached. And we're looking forward to, in fact, getting him and his mum coming back at the games now and getting him back in the director's box. You know,
you certainly believe there's still a role for Ali to play within the club?
Well, I think no doubt, and I think as I made it clear in previous interviews, I think Ali is a Rangers legend. He's an all-time leading goal scorer. And I think Ali, he managed the club at a very, very difficult time, under very, very difficult circumstances. He didn't have the opportunity that the current management team have got of a supportive board. He didn't have the opportunity of funding where he could anticipate in advance. In fact, quite the opposite. I think the club has been shrunk around Ali. So I think there's a level of respect for the job Ali did under difficult circumstances. And I think it must be borne in mind that Ali also worked for nothing for some of that time and worked for half price during some of that time. So he's given a lot back to the club. And I think it is now good that we've put it behind us now, and I think he can be recognised for the Rangers legend that he clearly is. Ali didn't have to do this. Remember, he did have an agreement with the club, and the club had to honour that agreement. So the concession is all on Ali's side. He has been generous to the club. It's not the other way around.
Yeah. The club has appointed new auditors and new advisors in the last couple of months or so. Does that mean a new share issue is close, or the club is about to be refloated on a stock market?
No, I think the auditors is a separate issue from that. I think the importance of the auditors was, of course, if you don't get the audited accounts out on time, you can't have your general meeting. And the general meeting has to happen before the 31st of December. So the auditor's timing is really quite important to get the accounts out as soon as we can, but it's not directly related to the listing, although clearly indirectly, if you don't have audited accounts, it's tough to proceed with the listing.
You discussed earlier the appointment of a new managing director and some of the board appointments. Everything there seems to have worked very, very well so far. It's
been phenomenal. I think Stuart settled in well. Andrew already had a lot of the background and the history of the club, and again, he's another one who at least has that ability to recognise how the club used to be. So that's been fantastic. We've now got the commercial position in place as well. So we've really got a functioning board at the public company level. It's all settled down with the changes that we made, and a very good operational working relationship with the executive board. So it really has settled in extremely well. So it's not just what's happening in the football side, but it really is working very, very well behind the scenes as well.
We've seen some small changes beginning to happen at Ibrox in terms of the infrastructure, refreshing, etc. Is this going to continue? Is there a programme being put in place to update the stadium?
There is. In fact, I've just come from a meeting on that very point. I think that one of the things about the stadium, and perhaps I see it more than most people because I'm coming on a less regular basis, I think a lot of the vicinity around the stadium is starting to look very, very tacky, and I think there's a lot that we still have to do to the facilities themselves and what's happening around the stadium. So again, it's just something we have to pay attention to, and I think make some improvements in that area and make the whole fan experience, I think, more enjoyable just being around the stadium.
Will or has a budget already been set for these improvements to take place?
Not a budget per se, but we've started to make money available already in terms of the stadium. I mean, some of the areas we're looking at, we don't have budgets yet, we don't have costings. We've just decided that it's something that we have to do. What it eventually will cost us, we'll have to go out and get some assessments on that.
And we've also seen some work beginning at Murray Park, for example, the new indoor pitch has been laid, etc. Again, is there the opportunity for improvements to be made there?
There's been huge changes, in fact, out at Auchenhowie. I think that we've really had this situation with the whole Auchenhowie operation where I think there's always been the promise of it being a great facility and what it can deliver. And it has delivered some reasonably accomplished players who have come through and gone on to play in the Premier League, but we feel it hasn't been working. It's been underfunded, and part of the initiative with Mark and Davey and Craig at the academy side is to integrate the academy back into the whole philosophy of how we want to play football, and that's requiring some investment in infrastructure, but also in some of the human resources we need to manage that side of things.
And will you be looking for the academy side of things to always improve? I think a third of the playing squad on Saturday's game there was made up by academy players. That must be already pleasing to see at such an early stage.
It is pleasing. It's nice to see the willingness, I think, of Mark and David to bring these guys through, but we still think we're way short of what we think we need for the long-term ambition of the club. So part of this kind of programme of getting Rangers back is going to include investment over the next couple of years significantly into the whole academy operation.
How important will it be for supporters and everyone involved in the club to realise that there's still a lot of work to be done and a long way to go despite the positivity that surrounds the club just now?
I think we're hoping from the supporters' point of view that they will continue to get the good football experience, and as far as the maybe the hard work that the board has got to do behind the scenes. We just want to get on with that without it being in the face of the supporters. If the supporters just trust us, we're doing whatever we have to do there behind the scenes, but we don't want to necessarily be debating that with the supporters and saying this is what's going on behind the scenes. They must just enjoy the football and trust that we will go on and do whatever else we have to do behind the scenes to make sure that the football continues to improve to the level we want to and become sustainable in the context of the football club. What we don't want is a situation where there was a level of football on the field that required heavier levels of debt finance and ultimately puts the club in financial jeopardy. We want to give the balance between the level of football they'd expect and it done in a sustainable way financially.